The smell of smoke woke me up at 2 a.m. I jumped out of bed and ran to the window. My heart nearly stopped. My grandfather's vintage John Deere tractor was on fire, flames reaching toward the night sky. This wasn't an accident. This was war, a war I never asked for when I bought this place. Just 3 months ago. Let me back up. My name is Sam Taylor. After 15 years working in the city, I finally saved enough to buy my dream home, a small farmhouse on 5 acres at the edge of Oak Ridge Estates. The house needed work, but the land was perfect for the hobby farm I dreamed about since I was a kid. And that green and yellow 1952 John Deere tractor, it was my grandfather's pride and joy, passed down to me when he died last year. The very first day after moving in, I found a fancy envelope stuck to my front door. Inside was a letter printed on thick paper with gold lettering. Welcome to Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. Membership required. Annual dues. $2,500. I laughed and tossed it in the trash. My property wasn't part of their fancy development. I had the property maps and records to prove it. My land was here long before they built their cookie-cutter houses with perfect lawns. That's when I first met Karen Wilkins. She marched up my gravel driveway wearing a bright pink tracksuit and diamond earrings, big enough to see from space. "You must be the new neighbor," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Karen Wilkins, president of the Oak Ridge Estates HOA. I introduced myself and offered her some fresh lemonade. She ignored it. "I noticed you haven't sent in your membership forms," she said, looking past me at my tractor parked near the barn. Her nose wrinkled like she smelled something bad. "And that farm equipment is a clear violation of our community standards." I tried to be nice. "This property isn't actually part of Oak Ridge Estates," I explained. "It was my grandfather's farm before your development even existed. I have all the paperwork." Karen's fake smile disappeared. "Every property in this zip code is part of our association," she snapped. "That eyesore needs to be removed immediately. It's bringing down property values." After she left, I called the county office and double-checked my deed. Just as I thought. My property was completely exempt from HOA rules. I sent Karen a polite email with copies of the documents. The next morning, I found my mailbox stuffed with violation notices, not just for the tractor, but for my vegetable garden, the chicken coop I was building, and even the color of my mailbox. Each notice threatened fines of $100 per day. My neighbor on the other side, Bill Johnson, came over that afternoon. "Watch out for Karen," he warned. "She's on a power trip since getting elected last month. Ran on a platform of cleaning up the neighborhood and protecting property values. She's already forced 3 families to move." Over the next 2 weeks, things got worse. Karen and her HOA buddies drove by my house constantly, taking pictures of my property. They left more notices. Someone called animal control about my chickens. Even though I had all the proper permits, the officer who showed up just rolled his eyes when I explained about Karen. "Not surprised," he said. "We get calls from that HOA all the time." I tried reasoning with them at their monthly meeting. I brought my property documents, maps, and even a letter from my lawyer explaining that my farm was exempt from their rules. Karen cut me off after 2 minutes. "Rules are rules," she said. "No exceptions." That evening, my old college roommate Jamal called. We hadn't spoken in months, so it was great to catch up. He'd just gotten a big promotion in Washington, D.C. "I can't say much over the phone," he said, sounding excited, "but I'm working on a special agricultural project now. The president himself is backing it. It's about food security and new farming methods. We need a test site outside the city, but close enough for officials to visit easily. Your place would be perfect." I was about to tell him about my HOA troubles when I smelled smoke. Looking out the window, I saw the orange glow of flames. "Jamal, I have to go," I said, dropping the phone. "Someone set my tractor on fire!" I grabbed my fire extinguisher and ran outside in my pajamas, the cold night air hitting my lungs as I sprinted toward my burning tractor. The flames were already taller than me, orange and angry against the black sky. I fought the fire as best I could, but the extinguisher wasn't enough. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. 4 people standing in the shadows, across the street, just watching, as I worked desperately to save my grandfather's tractor. One of them stepped into the light from the fire. It was Karen, wearing a bathrobe with her arms crossed, a small smile on her face. 3 men in suits stood behind her. I recognized them as HOA board members from the meeting. "Fire department is on the way," called Bill, my friendly neighbor, running over with his garden hose. "What happened?" "Ask them," I said, pointing across the street. Karen stepped forward. "Your unauthorized farm equipment is a fire hazard," she said loudly enough for the gathering neighbors to hear. "This is exactly why we have rules against such eyesores. Perhaps now you'll consider joining our association and following proper guidelines." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was she actually suggesting that my tractor spontaneously caught fire at 2 a.m.? That this was somehow my fault? The fire trucks arrived with sirens blaring, and the firefighters quickly got the blaze under control. But it was too late. My grandfather's tractor was a blackened shell. I sat on the ground, covered in soot, watching as Chief Martinez examined the scene. "This wasn't an accident," he said quietly, kneeling beside the tractor. "I can smell accelerant. Gasoline, maybe." Officer Rodriguez arrived next and took my statement. While looking around the property, "Any idea who might have done this?" he asked. I glanced across the street where Karen and her HOA friends were still watching, now trying to look concerned as neighbors gathered around. "I have some suspicions," I said, "and I might have proof. After the mailbox vandalism last week, I'd installed security cameras around my property, something Karen didn't know. I led Officer Rodriguez inside to my computer and pulled up the footage. The video was crystal clear, even in night vision. Two men in uniforms that said Oak Ridge Maintenance approached my tractor just after midnight. They placed yellow stickers on it that read, "Violation," and then one of them pulled out a gas can. "We'll just scare him a little," the man said clearly. "Karen wants this thing gone by morning." The second man looked nervous. "She said to tag it, not torch it, Mike." "Just a small fire," the first guy said, pouring liquid around the tires. "It'll smoke up, he'll call the fire department, and by tomorrow he'll be begging to follow the rules." Officer Rodriguez watched the footage twice, his face getting darker each time. "This is serious," he said. "Arson, destruction of property, conspiracy." He called for backup, and within minutes, 3 police cars arrived. I watched from my front porch as Officer Rodriguez confronted Karen and the HOA board members, showing them stills from my security footage on his tablet. Karen's face turned white. The man I recognized as the HOA treasurer tried to walk away, but another officer stopped him. "They were just supposed to tag it for removal," Karen said loudly. "The accelerant must have been an accident." That admission was all Officer Rodriguez needed. I watched in shock as Karen and 2 of the board members were handcuffed and escorted to the police cars. Karen twisted her head toward me as they led her away. "This isn't over!" she shouted, her face red with rage. "That monstrosity violates our community standards. You'll never win against the association." As the police cars drove away, neighbors I'd never met came over to offer support. Bill brought coffee for everyone. An older lady named Rose told me she'd had her garden gnomes confiscated by the HOA last summer. A young couple said Karen had fined them $500 for having a swing set that was 2 inches taller than regulation. "She's been terrorizing this neighborhood for months," Bill explained. "Nobody's had the guts to stand up to her until now." By sunrise, my yard was full of neighbors offering to help clean up. Someone brought donuts. 3 different people offered to lend me farm equipment. A local reporter showed up after hearing about the incident on the police scanner. I was exhausted but grateful for the support when my phone buzzed with a text from Jamal. "Just talked to POTUS about our project. He's flying in tomorrow to see your place. Don't tell anyone, this is classified." I stared at the message in disbelief. The President of the United States was coming to my farm tomorrow? I looked around at my burned tractor. The fire damage, the neighbors, the reporter taking pictures. How could I possibly host the president here? And what would happen when Karen made bail? I had a feeling she wasn't the type to give up easily. What had started as simple neighborhood harassment had just collided head-on with matters of national security. I woke up to the sound of car doors slamming at 5:30 a.m. Men and women in dark suits were walking around my yard. My burned tractor still sat sadly in the field, a black reminder of what the HOA had done. "Mr. Mitchell?" A tall woman with short hair knocked on my door. "I'm Agent Collins with the Secret Service. We need to secure your property immediately." My jaw dropped. "Secret Service? Is this about the tractor fire?" Agent Collins shook her head. "No, sir. This is about your visitor today. President Thompson will be here in 3 hours. We need to make sure everything is safe." My phone buzzed. It was Jamal. "Sorry about the early wake-up. Couldn't warn you about security protocol. Be ready by 8. I rushed to get dressed as more black SUVs arrived. Agents with dogs walked the perimeter of my land. Others set up metal detectors near my driveway. One team checked under my porch with mirrors. "We have a situation," Agent Collins said, looking through binoculars. "There's a gathering at your property line." I grabbed the binoculars. Karen stood with at least 15 neighbors holding signs. "No farms in Oak Ridge and join Ho or leave. And protect our property values." "She made bail already?" I was shocked. "There's a restraining order against her." "She's staying exactly 100 feet from your property line," Agent Collins explained. "Technically legal." She spoke into her wrist microphone. "Team B, monitor the crowd. Any movement toward the property, shut it down." I reached for the folder on my kitchen counter. "Agent Collins, you should see these." I handed her my property records and survey maps. My land was here 50 years before their development. They've been harassing me because I won't join their HOA, but my property is legally exempt. Agent Collins flipped through the documents. Smart of you to keep these handy. Mind if I make copies? As she scanned the papers, I heard helicopter sounds growing louder. A sleek black helicopter dropped lower, then landed in my east field. They're early, Agent Collins muttered, hurrying outside. The door opened, and Jamal stepped out first, wearing a suit I'd never seen him in before. Then President Thompson himself emerged, smiling and waving. My heart raced. The President of the United States was walking toward my farmhouse. So you're the famous holdout farmer. President Thompson shook my hand firmly. Jamal has told me all about your situation. And about that beautiful John Deere. Where is it? My stomach sank as I pointed to the charred remains. That's what's left of it, sir. The HOA, The President's smile vanished. I was briefed about the arson on the way. Terrible business. He turned to an aide. Make sure the Justice Department looks into this. Arson is a federal crime when it involves a presidential project site. Cameras flashed as the president walked the property. News crews had somehow gotten wind of the visit. The protesters at the edge of my land had gone quiet, staring in disbelief. This land is perfect, the president announced, gesturing widely. The elevation, the soil quality, the water access, exactly what we need for our food security initiative. These 5 acres will become America's first presidential vertical farming research facility. I hadn't even agreed yet, but I wasn't about to correct the president on national television. Sir! Karen pushed past a Secret Service agent, almost reaching us before being stopped. This man is violating our community standards. His tractor was an eyesore. We've been trying to enforce... the president interrupted. You must be from the Homeowners Association. His voice was suddenly cold. Let me be clear. Interfering with the Presidential Agricultural Security Project is a federal offense. And arson? That's a minimum 10-year sentence. Karen's face turned white. Arson? No, that was just supposed to be a warning. They weren't supposed to actually... Agent Collins stepped forward. Ma'am, are you admitting to conspiracy to commit arson? Karen realized her mistake too late. As agents led her away, she shouted, This isn't just about an ugly tractor. You don't understand what's really happening here. The crowd of neighbors quickly broke apart, hurrying back to their homes as news cameras swung their way. The president toured my barn and fields while experts took soil samples. I noticed Jamal hanging back, looking worried. When I caught his eye, he motioned for me to join him. There's something you should know, he whispered. This isn't just about farming. We've discovered technology that could solve world hunger, but powerful people want to stop it. Your property is perfect because it's not on anyone's radar. Just then, Agent Collins interrupted us. Sir, we have an unauthorized drone overhead. The president's security team immediately formed a protective circle around him, rushing him toward the helicopter. As they hurried away, I looked up. The small drone hovered, its camera pointed directly at me. Who was watching? And what had I just gotten myself into? The police released Karen with an ankle monitor, but my problems were just beginning. Strange cars drove slowly past my house. My mail started arriving opened, and that drone kept appearing, hovering just outside my property line. Trace the drone, Agent Collins told me over coffee in my kitchen. She slid a folder across the table with photos inside. It belongs to Westland Development Corporation. I recognized the name instantly. They've been trying to buy my land for years. They built the whole Oak Ridge neighborhood. Agent Collins nodded. And guess who funded Karen's HOA presidency campaign? Westland donated $10,000 to her Community Improvement Fund. My security system pinged on my phone. Someone was at my mailbox. I checked the camera to see Karen stuffing papers inside. Isn't she violating her restraining order? I asked. Not quite. Your mailbox is technically on county property, just outside your land. Agent Collins sighed. But I'm more interested in what she's delivering. We walked down to check. Inside was a final notice. Last chance. $500,000. For your property. Offer expires. Tomorrow. $500,000? I whistled. My property was worth maybe $300,000 at most. They're desperate, Agent Collins said. But why? That afternoon, I dug through old county records online. My grandfather had mentioned something about mineral rights when he left me this land. After 2 hours of searching, I found it, a geological survey from 1972, showing a potential aquifer under my property, one of the largest in the state. It's not just about luxury housing, I told Agent Collins when she returned. It's about water rights. Just then, my security system alerted again. My backyard camera showed Karen talking to a man in an expensive suit near my shed. That's Marcus Reynolds, Agent Collins said, grabbing her radio. CEO of Westland Development. We rushed outside, but they were already hurrying away. A business card had been left on my back step. Final warning. That evening, Jamal arrived with a team of scientists. We need to start soil sampling tonight, he explained. The president wants results by morning. As they worked under floodlights, Jamal pulled me aside. This isn't just about farming anymore. Our vertical farming technology uses 95% less water than traditional methods. Companies that control water rights stand to lose billions. Like Westland? I asked. Exactly. They're not just a development company. They're owned by Aquacore Industries, one of the largest private water rights holders in America. The scientists gasped suddenly. One of them held up a soil sample glowing faintly under a special light. What is it? I asked. Rare earth minerals, the scientist explained. Essential for advanced technology. Your land has one of the richest concentrations I've ever seen. Jamal's phone buzzed. His face turned serious as he read the message. The president's food security advisor has disappeared, along with our project blueprints. A traitor? I asked. We think so. And a crash from inside my house interrupted him. We raced inside to find my front window shattered. 3 people in black masks were already in my living room. I grabbed a shovel from beside the door and swung it, connecting with one intruder's arm. The light suddenly blazed on. Secret Service agents I hadn't even known were watching the house swarmed in from all directions. The intruders were quickly pinned to the floor. Agent Collins pulled the mask off one of them. I recognized the face immediately from the business card. Marcus Reynolds, CEO of Westland. You think this ends with me? He snarled as they handcuffed him. We've got judges, senators, governors on our payroll. This goes higher than you can possibly imagine. As they led him away, one of the scientists called out from the yard. You need to see this right now. We hurried outside. The soil samples had been arranged in a row, each one glowing more brightly than the last. This isn't just about farming or water, the scientist said excitedly. The mineral composition here could revolutionize battery technology. Whoever controls this land controls the future of energy storage. My simple farm had suddenly become the center of something much bigger than a neighborhood dispute. We need to move you to a secure location, Agent Collins insisted. Until we know who else is involved, you're not safe here. As I packed a small bag, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Mitchell? A woman's voice said. This is Senator Williams. I understand you've had some trouble with your homeowners association. How did you get this number? I asked. That's not important, she replied. What's important is that I can make your problems disappear, if you're willing to sell your land to the right buyer. I looked at Agent Collins, who was motioning for me to keep the caller talking while she traced the call. And who would the right buyer be? I asked. The senator laughed softly. Let's just say, friends of mine who understand the true value of what lies beneath your little farm. $1 billion cash, tonight. My hands shook. $1 billion? For my 5 acres? I'll need to think about it, I stalled. Don't think too long, she warned. Not everyone trying to acquire your property will be making such generous offers. The call ended. Agent Collins looked up from her tracking device. The call came from Westland Development Headquarters. We've got her. As we rushed to the waiting SUV, Jamal's phone rang. His face went pale as he listened. What is it? I asked as we sped away from my farm. The missing advisor, he whispered. They found him. He's dead. You won't believe what I found in Marcus Reynolds' phone, Agent Collins said, rushing into my kitchen at 5 a.m. He has text messages with someone called the Commissioner about stopping the president's farming project at all costs. I almost spilled my coffee. The break-in at my house wasn't just about scaring me away. These people were willing to do anything to stop our vertical farming project. We need to set a trap, I said, spreading out my property maps on the table. And I know exactly how to do it. Agent Collins looked doubtful but called Jamal. Within an hour, we had a plan. We would leak fake news that the president was coming back to sign special papers at my farm that would start the project nationwide. I went on my social media and posted big news coming tomorrow. Can't say much, but my small farm is about to change everything. I added a photo of my half-burned tractor with an American flag draped over it. Karen and her HOA friends took the bait immediately. From my window, I watched them gathering at the edge of my property with new signs and angrier faces. My security cameras picked up Karen on her phone, talking excitedly to someone. She's calling Reynolds right now, Agent Collins confirmed, listening through special equipment. And Reynolds is calling the commissioner. That night I couldn't sleep. What if our plan didn't work? What if these people hurt someone? I walked out to check on my damaged tractor, running my hand along its burned side. We're going to fix you, I whispered. At dawn, instead of the president arriving, news vans pulled up. I had called every local station with an anonymous tip about corruption in Oak Ridge Estates. Cameras rolled as Agent Collins and a team of FBI agents surrounded the HOA protesters. Karen's face turned white when Agent Collins approached her. Karen Wilkins, we have a warrant for your arrest for conspiracy, arson. and attempting to interfere with a federal project. "This is ridiculous," Karen shouted as cameras filmed everything. "I was just protecting our neighborhood values. Is that why you accepted $50,000 from Westland Development to pressure me to sell my farm?" I asked loudly, holding up documents Agent Collins had given me. "Is that why you had my tractor set on fire?" The crowd of neighbors gasped. Many of them lived in houses built by Westland. They had no idea their HOA president was being paid under the table. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," Karen said, suddenly looking small and scared. "Marcus just said to make your life difficult so you'd sell. I didn't know about the bigger plan to stop the president's farming project." Just then, a black SUV screeched to a halt. A well-dressed man stepped out. Commissioner James Harrison of the Agricultural Land Board, the same man who had been texting with Reynolds as the commissioner. "That's him!" I pointed. An FBI agent swarmed the vehicle. As Harrison was handcuffed, he glared at me. "You have no idea what you've done. This farming technology would have destroyed thousands of jobs in traditional farming, or created new ones," I replied calmly. "Change is scary, but fighting it with crimes is never the answer." Within days, the whole story broke nationwide. Reynolds, Harrison, and 12 others were arrested in what the news called the Garden Plot. They had spent millions buying HOA leaders across the country to block land used for new farming methods. Karen and 4 HOA board members faced lesser charges but still lost everything. Most hadn't known the full scope of what they were part of, just that they were being paid to harass people like me. 3 months later, my tractor sat freshly painted and fixed in front of my farm, which now had the first working vertical farming tower in America. President Thompson had kept his promise, and my small property was now creating as much food as 50 acres of traditional farmland. Jamal stopped by often, bringing government experts to learn from our success. "You know," he said one evening as we watched the sunset, "when I suggested your farm to the president, I just thought it would be a quiet place to test our ideas. I never expected you'd help uncover a nationwide scheme." I smiled. I just wanted to keep my tractor and farm in peace. The most surprising visitor came one rainy Tuesday. Karen's husband Thomas stood on my porch, soaking wet and holding a covered dish. "Karen wanted me to bring this," he said quietly. "She's doing community service at the senior center now. The judge was lenient since she cooperated. She's really sorry." I accepted the peace offering, her famous lasagna. "Tell her I hope she's learning from this." Thomas nodded. "She is. We all are." "The new HOA president wants to talk to you about turning some of the community green spaces into mini farms like yours." As he left, I looked at my tractor gleaming in the rain. Sometimes standing your ground isn't just about winning. It's about changing minds. A week later, a school bus full of 4th graders arrived for a tour of our farm. As they gathered around my famous tractor, one little girl asked, "Did you know your tractor would start a revolution?" I laughed. "No, I just knew it was worth fighting for." That night, the president called. "We're taking the program nationwide," he said. "All because you refused to let an HOA push you around." I walked out to my porch and watched fireflies dancing over my fields. My little stand against an unfair HOA had changed not just my life, but farming itself. And my tractor that started it all? It runs better than ever.